Hear ye. So open up the planning board meeting and the first item on the agenda is calling the meeting to order. Check. Designating voting members. Got 5 people here. Designate all you voting members. Is that what we're supposed to do? I'm not totally sure about that. Alright. Consider the minutes from the previous meeting that were distributed via email by our soon-to-be departed secretary. It is permanent from our perspective, but we don't wish you ill. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move we accept the minutes as distributed.
Do I hear a second? Excellent. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, raise your hand. This is unanimous. Great work, Madam Secretary. I thought maybe if I start using the title, maybe that would be Madam Secretary might entice her to stay. Who's Madam Secretary on TV? Tia something. All right. So, third item, I will hold off on for a moment. I'm currently acting as the chair. Don't really want to be. And I'd like to suggest that the board ask Mr. Pierce to reinstate himself into his position if the board is so willing to consider him to be the chair again. Because we never actually changed the title, so I don't think we have to do a new election or anything like that. I am in favor of it, as the person who feels the pain, but I think everybody feels a little pain. Is anybody else in favor of it or against it? All right, Mr. Pierce, if you would like to take over your appointed role as chair, I will render the conch to you.
I really like the ideas we had at one point of trying to share the job around, and I hope that I can lean on others here and there that we can make it a more palatable job.
I am always unwilling, but will do whenever you need.
Thank you. Thank you. Only the difficulty,
which is just, that's me.
Yeah, that's bad enough. Thank you.
So now you're the chair again.
Wow.
I'm going home.
Would you address me properly?
Chair Pierce?
Chair Pierce, thank you. So where's the agenda here?
The next is the discussion with CEO Don Kent of various items, including the Tom Wright Flying Squirrel Enterprises.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
LBM and FHR.
So, Don, do you want to tell us about the Tom White saga?
Well,
he is now our CEO, yes.
unfortunately, somewhere between when we took the application and when it got approved, we got 3 signatures from the planning board, but the restrictions of anything kind of body were just get added to it. I'm not sure which.
Do we have a list of conditions?
I'm not sure what they are, because that was right about the time when I was leaving. I took the application and then wasn't here when it was finalized.
Excuse me, hang on
Yes.
just a second.
I remember you put conditions on it. There were conditions about noise, there were conditions about time of operation, there was a whole list of
David,
So what happened was, because we looked into this before, was that the secretary at the time took notes at the meeting and wrote down the conditions, mostly in the meeting notes, and then was supposed to create a separate document with the conditions that would be attached to the CUP when it was transmitted to the applicant. I've asked the former secretary 6 times for that document and that copy of what was provided to the applicant, and have not received a response. And according to the applicant, when they received the CUP, there was not a list attached. And so, although he was present and certainly knew what those conditions were when he signed it, so what I would suggest is we pull the minutes and have somebody look at the meeting on the video, recreate the conditions from the dialogue and from the minutes, and send them to Mr. White or Wright, what is it? White, saying that we have rectified an apparent administrative error. For him to suggest that he didn't know what the conditions were is disingenuous at best.
I have spoken with him, and he ran this by his attorney. And your attorney maybe you could clarify it more, but apparently it didn't get signed or turned down within the time frame that's called for the CUP. And their position is because there are no conditions listed, he doesn't have to get it.
so Don, you also showed me his conditional use permit, and I saw that while it was signed by 3 members of the board, it was not signed by him, and if it's not signed by him, it is not valid. So I don't really want to get into a tomato throwing contest with Tom. I like the guy. I want his businesses here in town. I look forward to driving down the road, half a mile and having a hamburger. I want him to be here, and I want him to succeed.
And we gave him everything he asked for.
And
There's nothing that he asked for we didn't give him.
and one of the things that happens with applicants is that they think they want this, and then they get out there and they start to put this business together, and they find out they want this, but they really want that. And they look at this big scary board that can say yes or no, and they feel powerless, and it just it's very difficult on people. Tom, I wonder if you could call him. I'd be willing to talk to Tom anytime. We have a good relationship. If you want to call him, that's very appropriate also. I think you have a good relationship with Tom.
I spoke to him before. I believe there are conditions that we disagreed with. So I didn't want to get into a difficult situation. If you want to follow up with him further than that,
I'll follow up with him.
I don't think there's any relation.
No, not at all.
what's the date on the CUP?
Well, I accepted it initially. It was February 16th, 2024.
Feb 16. I will take on the attempt to recreate. Being somebody who's deaf, I can't hear this full recording anyway, so
Oh,
We'll see where we get.
On January 23rd, he came before the planning board to talk about revising his conditional use permit also.
Is that in 25 or?
25, yeah, that was for the, yeah.
Yes, he did come in front of us.
Yeah, but
And
he
his
didn't,
lawyer started in on this whole spiel,
Mhm.
and I said, calm down,
yeah,
just calm down. And she shut up, and we went away. So really what we need to do,
because he didn't, at that time, he didn't really know what he wanted to do to add on to the
we
thing.
just paid her to complain at us.
Yeah,
You know. Everybody realized that was not getting anybody anywhere. I told her to shut up and when she could be positive, talk to us. Just cut into the chase. Yeah, okay.
the other leverage you may have in that case, should you need it. I couldn't find any evidence where I got to see if they have his office building in the former church.
Okay.
And he is running a business here. Mostly, I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that he has a different idea of what this is.
Could you say that last bit again there?
I said mostly I wanted to make you aware that he seems to have a very different idea of what conditions are in his conditional use permit.
Well, I will invite him to come listen to the planning board meetings with me if you would like to.
That might make sense. He'll probably accept it.
I mean, I got nothing to prove or push things one way or another,
Right.
Whatever it is.
Well, it's my recollection that people have come back once they start going by the CUP and they do want to make changes to your point.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen anybody give anybody a hard time about that. Usually people have been more than willing to sit down and discuss it, and if it makes sense, they do an amendment to it.
Yeah. It's how people perceive us, not what the actuality is.
I suppose.
It superimpose the fangs and, all that.
The bark is worse than the bite.
Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, do you want to tell us about Long Beach Marina?
Yes. That was another thing. When I came, there were a lot of emails and things I had to answer and get back to people. It was taking a while to get them caught up. But my recollection was one of the conditions I had to do, and it's an environmental, I think it's a state regulation. When you have a certain amount of square feet of parking area, you have to have a sediment pond to collect the runoff and filter so it doesn't run into the stream. And the complaint was somebody was aware of that. They've been to the meeting and it never was put in. And I went by there today and they graded everything out nicely, graded it all up, and they're going to repeat it. But there's no evidence of anybody putting in ponds.
So would that be, if that's a state requirement, would that be up to the state to enforce that?
It would probably be up to the planning board if it's in the CUP.
Or not up to the planning board, up to the code enforcement?
Well, that may be. I just would like to see a copy of it. I can't find a copy of it. I don't know where it is. A few documents that are filed somewhere, I'm sure. I'm just not sure where they are.
So you can't find the CUP for,
I will continue to try.
okay,
Okay. The policy that worked well in the past was that once you agreed to a CUP, you both signed it, gave it to me, I called the person, they come in, I have them sign it, I give them one copy, I filed one copy, and the land use record, you can get one copy back to you. And that seemed to work out pretty well.
yes.
But, everybody has a different way of doing it.
So,
Go back and get them. In 2 sets of minutes, there were a list of all the conditions.
so the conditions are listed in the minutes of the meeting
All right.
Marina, I have
for
not,
the marina.
I have not found the minutes for the audits for
Okay. Well, there were, with Tom White, there was the Flying Squirrel, which is across the street, there was TW Enterprises, which was over on Carl Burnell Road,
Right. That was to do with this tree trimming company.
with his tree company, yes.
Right. Oh, this is not Flying Squirrel.
This is Flying Squirrel, that's TW Enterprises.
You're talking about the TW.
Well, most recently, we're talking about the marina on 107, where they're putting in, they built one of the two buildings that they had requested for storage of boats and service and whatever. There were a list of conditions on there. One had to do with disposal of oils, and one had to do with the runoff of water, so that it wouldn't get into the wetland impact and adversely affect the farmers.
So there is a list of conditions there. That was under the David Strock system of writing the minutes and putting everything on the web, sending it all to Robin and it all went on the web. And I'm seeing the lines of print that I'm unable to do.
Well, the other way to deal with that is when they come in to get the building permit for the second building. My plan would be to bring that up.
Yeah, here's the planning board minutes for 9/28/2023. Got a public hearing with Robbins Lumber, and then the Long Beach Marina, conditions to the conditional use permit of Long Beach Marina, October 12th, 2023. And there's 13 conditions. I will email this
Oh, that would be very helpful.
to Don Kent, Baldwin Selectman, and Joe Pierce. Okay.
That would be super.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad you had that.
Just got it off the website.
Well, you know, it's a wonderful thing when you all talk to each other and we work together.
Okay.
Thank you. Don, what is the controversy with Frost Heave Road?
Well, there are two. One is on Bishop Delicio Road, where I had denied a building permit because there were more than two houses on a private road.
Yes.
And that was granted after I left. What I had worked out on that was the lady that had the first lot for the building permit is now given. Delicio Road was either 8 or 10 feet wide. I can't recall. It's very narrow. And there were people up the road that wanted to build. And the deal was going to be, she was going to give his land, make it the proper width. And the people that wanted to build houses were going to improve the road and present a plan to the planning board. He'd have it as a subdivision or however you want to do it. But that got dropped. The one with Frost Heave Road is the same thing. I researched it. That used to be a town road, but it was abandoned and taken off the road. A considerable amount of time ago. The only part of it that's still a town road is a few hundred feet up to the first house. And there are now 4 houses up there. And a permit was given last month for that one down yet further. And if you folks remember, when we were dealing with this on Delicio Road, there's been a fire, and we brought Steve Saunders in, and his concerns were fire apparatus, emergency vehicles bringing in water. And that's why we came up with that policy on the planning board in conjunction with it. On Frost Heave Road, it is barely 1 car wide. Somebody has to back up. It happened to me this afternoon, back all the way down the road because somebody's coming the other way. And we have an excellent fire department. I'm not throwing rocks at anybody, but there's a limit to what they can do. And if you've got fire trucks and all that equipment there to fire, and if somebody injured, you might not get an ambulance in there to come. And I think the town could be held liable for that.
How do you shuttle your water tanker in there?
Exactly.
Back and forth.
I think it
With
would be
firefighters coming with their own cars.
it'd be an effort to get a fire truck up there to the Francis
to 12 feet?
No. And I did notice when I was there, beyond 44B, where this latest permit is, but there is, some of that black culvert piping up there.
Mhm.
It's about 14 inches in diameter beyond where this guy has got a building permit. So whether there are plans to try to do something else up there, I don't know. But my understanding is if you have more than two houses, you, on private roads, you can't do.
What would you like us to do?
I guess what I'm looking for is to reaffirm that in policy, if not an outright ordinance. Does that in the ordinance?
It says that in the ordinance, what more do you need?
I don't think I needed anything more. I wouldn't have given the permit. It's not that they're nice, they're nice folks. They're not anything against anybody. But a couple of the neighbors have spoken to me and they don't like the fact that more houses get built up there. It's not so much having people, it's getting in and out of it.
Yeah,
Especially in the winter time.
Does anybody else on the planning board have anything they want to add to the discussion? Well, I think you can take that we're in support of you.
All right.
In support of you. Also,
It's just that the
We didn't
permit,
want to be back here about this road at all. We've been living in for quite a
I
while.
think Norm McKenney was selected when I first heard about it. That
Yeah.
would be a problem. Okay, so that's a while ago.
the permits weren't being able to give out, I could have held them hostage. So we could.
All of us get together and make it wide enough for passable. Because it is a burden,
Permits.
even the town.
They said that I get the right to build.
Yes,
They do.
yep.
I mean, it should have happened way back when Squad was up there. But that turned into a mess for us, we ended up in court and everything else over it. The town sent old records from 1824 saying the road was discontinued. It cost us $1,200, the lawyer wasn't really wanting to get too involved in it because town records were this and that. And then in 2005, we were the only ones on the road that would have said, okay, let the town have it because all the problems we had. But nobody else wanted it that way, so in 2005, you officially abandoned the road, property rights go back to the owners. Now another house is going up there as well.
I do not admit to any knowledge of road law. It is very, very complicated.
It is complicated, but it does have rules and it does have ways around it.
Yeah.
Well,
But our concern is the impassability and the inability to get anyone to help us make it wider. We maintain our end of the road, sometimes in the winter, we plow the town end of the road so that people can get out, because we are the secondary road for that parking.
Yep.
So we know we can't be first on the list, so we help keep that, and we kept ours maintained. We widened it as much as we can, but then
Yep.
legal obligations left, and we start funding the road as well, so.
Did I hear correctly, like, building permits were issued, they shouldn't have been?
That's correct.
And are they already building?
I've just done the second inspection on the septic system that they start building, putting in a log house. And one concern I have is, in addition to the house, which is fairly good size, they have a permit for a garage which is almost double the size of the house, which sounds to me like in a 2-acre lot, needed that or why they wanted to garage that big. Once a building permit is issued, the only way to put a stop to it is through the appeals court. I can't withdraw, especially with another permit. Why you did it, didn't I can't tell. I know that from what I've seen anyway, there are a lot of similar roads to that. And rights of way used to be given because you had a wood lot. Maybe there was a pasture up the road, you built a thousand back for a couple of months. Now because of the price of land and house lots, people are trying to build wherever they can.
So is there anything on either side of the road that makes it so it couldn't be widened? Or decides who owns the property, is there like stuff on either
Well, we
side?
have to put lines right away, we have to do a bunch of easements.
There's stone walls.
Stone walls are pretty close.
Yeah, but those, like, especially if
Well, we have the easement for it anyway,
They had to go
Concerned
through
about the fire.
condition.
yeah, no, I get it.
Where they're building up there right now, she went up and looked, and they got fire going, big brush pile. Nobody's there,
that was yesterday.
but the smoke is still going, so where there's smoke, there's fire. And we've already had 3 fires within a week or so.
But I did go up, I walked up on my lunch because I could smell smoke. Nobody was up there, I didn't get on their property or anything, but I took up a video, you still smoke.
Call the fire people to,
Well, I called the town, I called, and I guess, are you Chris? No. Well, Chris.
that can be.
Chris was in a fire in Cornish, so, but I just said, I just wanted it on record that, and there's no water source up there. And now we have a home that can go complain if the town can't get up there for whatever reason, or, you know,
That's what they just
I don't care, you
So
know.
it's not even wide enough to put a truck through it, like a fire truck?
You could get a
Well,
fire truck.
nobody-
There's nobody else there.
Yeah.
Or you have to back up and let them up there.
Or an ambulance is gonna be up there that, you know.
Can you turn around with a fire truck?
No, absolutely not.
You'd have to go way probably up on the mountain somewhere, I don't know.
You ain't gonna get-
I haven't been up there.
You know,
for
it's
years, you know.
That's the other reason why, it's a good idea, legally you have to. But you go before the planning board, and we've always paid a rate, and you have to have a turnaround.
Yes.
We did on another one, because there's a subdivision.
Circle
The
of
time
time
required, these folks to do considerable work, and to make the right of way that they require, but they are. But as far as anything else, I don't know that anybody else has.
We had to have that put in our deed. Just, it's down the road.
Yeah.
You can get a fire truck up there. I'm not sure in the winter it might be more difficult. You could at this point, you'd be scraping the size of the truck. But if you're trucking up water back and forth, there's no water up there. And you've got fire people's cars, you've got to put them somewhere in an ambulance. I think you could end very fast. That's my biggest.
Well, you know, if money just flowed into our coffers, the town just seized the land and then the name. I'm not sure that would excite people to put the budget together.
It would encourage also the people that own the land beyond this lot.
To build up even more out of
And
it
to
for
give
us.
us-
But, that's horrifying.
The only thing you can really do, you could appeal the decision, grant the permit. But that's kind of a harsh thing to have to do to somebody. I'm not sure. They seem like a nice young couple that work the other day.
That might help. We don't wanna see anything stop. We just, like I said, if town wouldn't issue the permit, if they had, I think it's like two more permits, it shouldn't have.
That's
So I
right.
could have held them hostage, you know, and then I could have said, listen, if the road's up, you can have the permit and go for it.
This nice young couple, are they nice enough to realize that if she gets pregnant and has to go to the hospital, they'd love to have a turnaround there for the ambulance?
A lot of people, several people in different areas, like one people don't do anything like that. That's up to the town, but most people think the town is responsible for getting fire trucks, getting an ambulance, and things like that. And when you say it's a private road, that's why you gotta be careful on a private road. They haven't thought that through.
So the town has to make, the selectmen have to make a decision whether or not they want to try to undo those permits through the appeal process. Is that
That's what it sounds like to me.
But the planning board could appeal it on the select board. I can't do it.
Either that or they could just.
we can appeal it? I don't know if we can appeal it. Can we appeal it?
I believe you can.
The code enforcement officer's job.
The code enforcement officer's job is right. However, if a code officer gets a building permit, you can't undo that, sort of going before the land. While I didn't get the permit, somebody else did. I'm not sure. I think they can. I think they can because of the requirements of the planning board. It has to go before them if you're building more than 2 houses on a private road. Or it could be.
So I checked in
think he's saying if it would be a subdivision on a private road if there's more than two. So they would have to get a subdivision permit to get, I think is what he's saying, they'd have to get a subdivision permit to have those houses up there. So in theory, we have some control over it, but if they don't come to us without a permit, I don't think we have any authority to anything.
Right, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think we are.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's not clear in the ordinance.
I mean, just as a planning board member, I would encourage, if we have erroneously and unlawfully issued permits, have the town try to figure out how to fix that, whether look at the road or appeal the permit until we can figure out how to make it safe. I don't think it's our job, though. I mean, I know it's easy for me to toss a stone to you and say, go for it, but
As we've been told many times, that's just like for us.
yeah, exactly. It's just concern, this always comes back to us because then 5 years down the road, people are going to point at these houses and say, well, you let them do it, why not us?
Exactly.
And so unless we at least try, once we learn that there's an unlawful situation, if we don't try to fix it, then it just continues the problem.
The ordinance says I can't issue them a permit, but it doesn't say what you do if somebody else did.
Yeah.
There is some.
Town official gives somebody permission to do something, and that is something that they can do.
Did they, can you say that again?
If somebody, let's say that the CEO issued a building permit, that information is something that they can use as part of law.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
So how do you revoke that? How do you revoke that?
Well, I think you have to take the court to revoke it, but I'm not sure. We certainly can talk to the attorney.
yeah, I mean, I would think you'd want to stop the people from doing anything more, because if you did do something wrong and you tell them they can't do it anymore, you probably have to pay whatever the cost they laid out. If they got a septic, if they, you want to stop it as early as you can. So if it is $2,000, town's only paying $2,000 versus $300,000 in the new house that they built. But again, it's easy for me to say because I don't have to do anything.
Like I said, if we could have not issued the permit, I could have held them hostage. If they were able to build the road up to Aspen, we'll all be here we go.
Yeah, that would be a rational way to
That you
approach
have
it.
to maintain it at that point.
No.
That's not-
Yeah, going on after that.
Sounds like it's more than that. Subdivision.
Well, but they're like,
Subdivision.
right.
Well, sometimes we go back and clean up mistakes, and that's what we have done before with subdivisions.
Anywho, it seems like we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point.
Yep.
Unless you have more.
It's not our responsibility.
No, it's just a safety, it was just a safety.
Yeah, we just said that formally requesting the town to address the impassability of the road. You can do that, or you can, they'll have to clarify the impassability of the road.
I think that's a select board issue. Yeah, I don't think it's us. Chris, I'm Chris.
Yeah.
Chris is gonna help you out.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for that.
But mainly, it's not concerned.
Just safety.
Okay.
Kids walk here.
44
I'm a bit older.
I'm right there.
We got too many people talking here.
Yeah,
So I'm not hearing you. I don't know whether what you said was important, I have no idea. Okay. I'm just trying to get control again here, because objects, I'd like to move on. Okay? And we've got discussion of Pigeon Brook, subdivision application.
I just put that in the agenda, this was in the last agenda, I didn't know whether there was anything more to, talk about. The one thing I'll say about the Pigeon Brook subdivision is that, there were some people posting on the Baldwin community site, and, they were confused or trying to confirm that there is actually a special, planning board meeting on the 31st. Because somebody was in talking to Robin about it, and, Robin didn't have it on the town calendar. And, I jumped in and told them that, David sent me a text telling me about it because I wasn't at the meeting. And B, there's an ad in the town shopper's guide that says there's a special meeting on the 31st. And then C, it's mentioned in the minutes. So I assured them on Facebook that there was going to be this special planning board meeting about the subdivision on the 31st. Have we set the date for the second meeting?
No.
Okay.
A meeting at a time.
And are we sure that the subdivision people are going to send out the notices to the abutters?
I think I sent them out. For the meeting?
For the special account?
Yeah, I think I sent them out.
So we sent.
Yeah.
One of the meetings, Jamie said that they would do it if we didn't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, and it should be in the shopping guide.
It is in the shopping cart. It was in yesterday's shopping.
Yeah, and then it'll be in the next one.
Now, the other thing, that, the list that I sent out is that, we're required by the subdivision ordinance that when they give us the plan, we officially accept it, not approve it, but accept it, that we have to send out a notice to the abutters saying that we've got the plan.
So there are more times that things have to be sent out. We have to continue sending things out to abutters.
But didn't we say that if we sent out the notice and the thing saying that we'd accepted the application, we were gonna do it on one?
And it is,
Okay.
I'll send out the acceptance tomorrow after that.
It's notifying the borrowers of the right property with an application for subdivision improvements. So we would add a special plan for application.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about, that property, as a member of the community and not?
Sure.
So the road driveway that goes all the way into lot 6.
Yeah.
If you remember, a section of it crosses into resource protection area.
Okay, yes.
Do we need to address that? Or do we just pump that until we're ready to put the road in? You can't get to the house and the road, what do you call it? Without going through that resource protection.
And I think the answer is that the road is already in place.
Path,
The path, road,
the road.
but perhaps the code enforcement officer might have a point of view that.
Right, I think when they made the presentation at the last meeting, that's what they said, and the driver would have to follow that path. You had trying to recall exactly, you had only one place where you could build the house.
I've asked him every time to put the driveway on the map, and he hasn't done it. I've asked him every time to put the driveway on the map, and he hasn't done it. That'll be a second.
It would be a good thing if there was still any.
I think it's important. But he hasn't done it. Straight we thought. They put the path on it, but they didn't designate it as a driveway.
Okay.
I have one, relative to old CUPs. One thing stuck in my mind from a CUP quite a while ago about the house across the street that burned down. They rebuilt, but he runs a 724 flea market on his property.
Yep.
And I remember you specifying a particular condition on his CUP that was he wasn't allowed to keep all of his stuff out all the time, that he had to bring it out and put it away because the town had problems with him basically having a junkyard on his property years ago, and you didn't want the same thing to happen here. And I've noticed that he keeps that stuff out 24/7, all the bikes, the boats, the SUVs, the ATVs, I mean, stuff like that. Now, I don't know whether anybody's complained about it or not, but technically he's not in compliance with the conditions established in his CUP.
The guy over there in the black chair, he's the guy to talk to.
I wondered about that too, because he had an existing CUP when his property burned down. So it would seem to me that it might have been a good idea if he could come in and say, this is what I want to do now, because he's built a couple of different new buildings, and I don't know how many sheds, but it looks like he's done a couple of them. He's probably trying to keep things under control. But it would have been a good idea if he came in and specified what he wanted to do and asked for modifications. Okay.
Oh, on TV.
Easy, that's it. So,
I'll redo that if you want me to.
there's so many other more important things to do. It's kind of, I kind of brought it up to see whether anybody's complained about it or whether it's something that collectively the board thinks selected. The CEO thinks that we should do something about it before it becomes a junkyard again.
Exactly. I know a couple of years ago, I think it was Memorial Day weekend or one of the holiday weekends, he started selling food out there. And there were a couple of complaints, and I looked it up, and that was definitely not in the CUP. So I went down and told him we had to shut that down, and he did. So I didn't have to send the letter.
And he's parking a truck on the shoulder with a sign to direct people into it, and the truck is over the white line, so you have to drive around it. It's a bit of a hassle, so we should kind of clean up this.
It's a dangerous road that is. Trying to make it up. If you want, I can pull that out and review it, and maybe bring it up to the next meeting and see what action we want to take. Feel he's in compliance or feel he's not. You issued the CUP, and I would rather have your input on it before I went.
shoreline zoning ordinance map update by Archipelago Law. We just got this in the last couple of days.
So, new, well, Bob knows all about this. We sent the memo to David. It's got, new shoreland, zoning ordinance, notes from, Mike Morse, that explains things, as well as there's a new map. Here's his notes, and here's that's the official shoreline zoning map, and then there's this other thing that I didn't want to make enough paper to print out, but there were 3 attachments.
It does.
I think the action items on it were, Bob, you can clarify this, is that there were some changes in the shoreline zoning ordinance that are in red that we needed to look at and talk about and make sure we wanted them because they suggested things to us that we had asked for that they thought of. And then I think the main thing, and then there are errors where 75 per in 100 feet were not corrected over the years, but they should be resolved. You can contact DEP for help resolving this issue. Blah, blah, blah. And then, I guess what Bob pointed out is that we need to have a public meeting about all this. Is there time to get this done before we ask folks to vote on it at the town meeting? Is that it, Bob?
Pretty much, yeah. So this was the, as we discussed about for what it did last fall, we started coming in to meet with Mike Pitts.
Well, you have to speak up, please. I'd like to hear you. Do we
Yeah,
want
I
to turn
can't hear
that off?
anything either because this thing is.
Yeah, so we gotta shout at each other.
You want me to turn it off?
No,
Okay. So this issue came up, I guess, almost a year ago, with being denied from this because of their land within resource protection. In accordance with the map you see up there. And it was kind of agreed that we need to go back and look at it. And I think over the objection of Joe Pierce, who was chairman of the planning board, we hired Dr. Pelican. Mike Morse, who used to be the.
I don't know as I objected, Bob, to hiring Archipelago. I objected to the treatment of the planning board very much. And I'm glad that Mr. Morse is, Mr.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all history.
So please don't say
not
that.
Gonna
Unless you want to
not
add
gonna relitigate that.
Okay. So anyway, we hired them. We've done the work on the condition that we would turn this back over to the planning board so that we get a hack at it. But the select board would recommend that this be done because it takes a lot of people's land out of resource protection and allows them to go forward with construction. Because a number of people say they'd like to get going. They bought their property. They had no idea that it was resource protection. That's the genesis of the whole thing. If you look at what he did was he just went through and added what's allowed by state law, a thing called limited residential district. And by doing that, some of the areas that were in resource protection now are in limited residential, and then the
lot of the other areas are taken off the map altogether. And so what we for the planning board to do is look at it, and make comment on what was recommended, and make some changes. I mean, it's okay. What we look at for the planning board is to recommend to the select board ordinance. I have a recommendation. This has been going on a long time. I don't think we should rush it. What I would recommend is that, you know, the planning board, for whatever reason, was not interactive with Archipelago and White Horse in doing all this. Now, one thing from the periphery that we did learn is that White Horse is the preeminent expert in the state for doing this sort of thing. And that there's probably a lot of really good work here. But now that it's coming back to the planning board after being driven by Mike Lee and the selectmen, I think the planning board should be given a chance to digest this and understand. The first step that seems to be makes sense, it's just kind of pragmatic, is that we wait for Mike Morse to come back from vacation, and we have him come back and present what they've done to the planning board so that we can understand it, and that we focus on identifying the specific issues that need planning board action. And then once we level set with that, we figure out the requisite public information sessions, special town meetings, or whatever we have to do to get all this authorized and approved by the voters. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure. Definitely does.
And I think it would be really good for Don, too, as the new CEO, to get everybody singing off the same page of music.
And the other thing that's helpful in conjunction with that, and I started a little bit of work on it, is different building permit application for land sensitive areas. For example, if you're in the Santa Creek Valley area, you have to get permission from some of it you have to get permission from the planning board. But to list all of those out and have them check which ones apply so that they're aware of it before they waste a whole lot of time.
Plan?
I thought that was excellent.
So the only thing I would add to the plan is it seems to me that we should have SMPDC ask them why there's such a difference in the two maps.
Right. That would be good to know.
But I'm not saying Morris is wrong. I don't know. I mean, we're not the experts. But they gave us a map that appeared, and they can do a dance on it too. I'm sure Mike can dance. But it concerns me if when you look at the two maps, they're strikingly different. And I guess I'd like to know why.
And there are implications to it too. I know if Don Sharp were here, he would say that there are risks to the town opening up all of that area with decreased resource protection, and it opens up a lot of it to development.
But what Morris is saying, he's not opening up anything. He's just giving us the map that we have totally screwed up.
Yeah.
So it's not even opening created. And to Mike Fleet's credit, he in part was saying that just in a very rude way. And so I think it's a legitimate issue based on what Morse did. And so one of us should send it to, what's the guy's name? SMEDC.
He's not there. The gentleman who opened the door.
Yeah.
No, he's gone.
But no idea.
Send it back to Michaela.
So we could send it to Michaela and have Michaela feel that it's worth $100 or whatever it'll cost. And look, if they screwed up, I hope they say they screwed up and we can feel more confident in what Morse has done. Like, I don't know what Lee told Morse, so there doesn't appear to be any shenanigans in all his documentation. It looks like it's legit. So I would just make me feel more comfortable. So who wants to send it to Michaela? I can do it.
Would you please?
Thank you. I don't know what I'm going to say. Do we have a electronic copy of the SMPDC one?
It's on the website.
Yes, it's on the website.
Okay. But otherwise, I'd like to find this first.
Well, I think what you said, Matt, is great. Sort it out in detail. Listen to everything that you want to. I will say Mike Morris is who planning board dealt with when you broke the first revision to the shoreline zoning ordinance. A number of issues that we worked with. And you know, get everybody in the same room. Make sure everybody has a chance to understand it. We can find out what we have to do specifically to resolve the 75 versus 100 feet issue, and then do the necessary administrative steps to get it approved. The other point is, if the town or the planning board wants to suggest that we do a lot more restrictions than what he recommended, you can do that. That's within the planning board's right to recommend. Yeah.
I would like to,
What he's showing is the minimum.
yeah. I would like to see what happens to the comprehensive plan, because I think the comprehensive plan and shoreline zoning ordinance are kind of dependent on each other.
Well, yeah, yeah, because, and that kind of leads us into, let me do a brief update on, it impacts the comprehensive plan because, so we had LD 2003. We had a town meeting about it, and Norm and Dale and other people were skeptical of making all the changes that we had SMP and D&C, because we hired Southern Maine to help us through updating the land use ordinance for LD 2003. And at that town meeting, we didn't approve it. And there was talk about home rule and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, it's both ironic and a moot point, because if the vote had passed that night to change the land use ordinance to get in compliance LD 2003 and ADUs and things like that, we would now be out of compliance again because there is this group called the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition. And they have driven and gotten passed into law LD 1272, LD 1829, LD 970, LD 997, LD 146, LD 1375, and LD 546. Now, I think a couple of them have been voted on and passed, but not signed into law, where the others have all been signed into law. So we would actually be out of compliance with state law again. And what this Maine Affordable Housing Coalition and the state legislature did is try to close all the loopholes that LD 2003 left. You know, because towns like ours that are rural were a little bit horrified at the idea of all this legislation driving potential growth and building in towns that we were unable to control. So a lot of towns did things like set minimum lot sizes and owner-occupied requirements and things like that. So MAHC and the state legislation passed more laws to close all those loopholes, basically saying these are going to be built and towns aren't going to stop it. And you know, I don't want to minimize the problem of a lack of housing stock in Maine. But the solution that state government is taking is like using a wet blanket to put out a fire where you just cover the whole thing. You're going to take a targeted approach and say, oh, we need workforce housing, so we're going to work with certain builders and things like that to put up workforce housing and stuff. They're just, you know, I'm rattling on, but let me give you an idea. LD 1272, an act to address the housing crisis by reducing barriers to building more accessory dwelling units, aims to alleviate the housing shortage by simplifying the process of adding accessory dwelling units to properties. It allows up to 4 dwelling units, including single-family, duplex, triplex, and ADUs on a single lot, exempting the first ADU from local density limits. The bill also prohibits municipalities from requiring owner occupancy or specific fire sprinkler systems in certain ADUs. That was another thing towns did to try and block these things, as they said, oh, they have to have sprinklers. Well, no, you can't. Increased density. LD 1272 permits up to 4 dwelling units on a single lot, which can include a combination of different types of housing. The first ADU on a lot is exempt from municipal housing density requirements. Municipalities cannot mandate that the property owner live in one of the units. You ready for this one? The bill allows ADUs to be converted into condominiums and sold separately. The bill redefines subdivision as the division of a parcel into 5 or more lots rather than 3. So not only does it put our land use ordinance out of compliance with state legislation, it makes 1929, an act to increase housing density and attract workers. Blah, blah, blah. Increased municipalities must allow at least 3 units on any residential lot, with up to 4 units permitted in designated growth areas or on lots with public sewer and water. Minimum lot sizes in areas with public sewer and water are limited to 5,000 square feet. Owner occupancy rules for ADUs are removed, and sprinkler requirements are generally eliminated unless there are 3 or more total units. Development reviews for projects with 4 or fewer units are simplified, and planning board approval is no longer mandatory for these smaller developments. Affordable housing incentives, the law provides an extra story in height for qualified affordable housing projects and increases the threshold for subdivision review from 3 to 5 units, blah, blah, blah. There's also one in there that says planning board members are required to get training on all these things within 180 days of being appointed to the planning board. So, you know, my head is spinning from all of this. And so we're so far past being out of compliance because of LD 2003 that you know, it's pretty crazy. So I've been talking with Michaela about this because it not only affects the planning board and the code enforcement officer and how we do our job, it also affects the whole purpose and mission of the comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan is all about what the citizens of Baldwin told us it was supposed to be, and that is keeping Baldwin rural. You know, this also nullifies any growth ordinance or growth plans or controls that we have. So, what's that?
I don't think it does qualify the growth ordinance.
No?
You read it in there?
I did read one thing in there that said that that it does impact growth ordinances. So, you know, Southern Maine Planning and Development Corporation is working on some sort of an education or training program for towns for how to come to grips with all this. So it's you know, and the one thing I asked Michaela is I said, we can't keep up. I mean, we spent thousands of dollars with Southern Maine Planning and Development to just get in compliance with LD 2003. And even if we had it going with all those changes, we'd be out of compliance again. And, you know, a town like Baldwin, we're trying to keep taxes under control. You know, we can't keep hiring consultants to try and get in compliance when it's so complicated. And the question I asked her is, I said, why should we do it? Why should we bother trying to have our land use ordinance and subdivision ordinance in compliance when these changes are so complicated and happening so fast that we can't keep up? And my thought was, you know, one option is just to keep our ordinances the way they are. And the CEO and the planning board are obligated to administer the ordinances the way they are. And, then if somebody gets denied a permit because the ordinances are out of compliance with state law, it can always go to the appeals board. And the appeals board can approve it on a case-by-case basis. And the risk with that is it opens us up to lawsuits if somebody wants to sue the town for denying their particular permit. But if they haven't exhausted the appeals board where it can get approved, it might, it might be able to get away from it.
I understand your concern, but the only thing I would say is these new laws do not direct the people involved to do anything. They do not have to sell the land, they do not have to subdivide their land. They can sit on it and keep the neighbors off if they want to. If the people involved, at the end of the day, will decide what happens. Not the law. I also realize that the lure of money is what drives the law.
That's what it is.
So,
That's your,
the fact of life,
you've got your groups like Marina and this group that are running the show.
The Maine Affordable Housing Coalition, they're gleeful.
But Marina is just like it. I mean, it's,
When I talk to people from out of state about being on the planning board, they look at the planning board as being nothing. Because in Connecticut, New York, and so forth,
They don't have home rule.
the appeals board is where power is. Everything just goes through the planning board and gets appealed to the appeals board. So what you're describing is what's going on.
it would be good to get the representatives that are voting on that, their opinions, to come in here and explain to us why they're doing this.
Well, yeah. So I'm curious as to whether the, what is that organization, the MMA, the Maine Municipal, organization, whether their training for planning board members, has been updated to address all this. I can't believe it has, because this is just happening so fast.
another planning board twice and I've never taken their course.
I took it once. I took it once and it was useless. It's all about Robert's Rules of Order and all that stuff.
Or which is good.
And how to take minutes and stuff.
I mean, you're taking an online course. I would say that MMA, before the discussions, they have always been against these mandates. With the idea that it's not against home rule, but it certainly is not in the spirit of home rule. Because home rule says that if the state passes law, the law is what's the law.
That's exactly right.
And we can no longer make the rule that kind of mandate. So it's not against the home rule in that regard, but it's against the spirit of it, which is that, so in fact, I think the mid-1800s up in the Midwest didn't originate here. It originated out in the Midwest, where a number of people said, we want to control our own local destiny. And it spread from there across the country to a large extent.
So this is kind of a message to the select board, which kind of, well, it's basically what Joe was saying too, that with all of these new LDs, rather than twisting ourselves into a pretzel and trying to get our land use and subdivision ordinances and everything in compliance with all these changes, does Baldwin want to take the approach of leaving our ordinances the way they are, having the planning board with the CEO work with those, and then anything that's not anything that somebody has a problem with, they take it to the appeals board? Or do we have to ask the town lawyer whether that creates too much liability for us?
We will ask the town lawyer what recommends.
Where's the town lawyer nowadays?
David Oregon.
David still doing?
Thank you.
The other thing that comes to mind with all of that is like over there in Cross Street Road, they're bigger lots, and they say now you can put all these extra buildings on. That's not the only road that will apply to that. Some of them are town that still push down. You're going to have to spend a huge amount of money bringing all these things up in compliance. The other caveat is that the second quantum clause just signed by the governor will not come into effect until 2027.
Yeah,
There's going to be probably another tranche of guidance that comes out from the state as to how to implement it.
Can I ask a question? Have we had involved in a lot of applications, permits to get those accessory dwellings on their property?
From what I've seen since I came back, the applications have found significant what they were about.
I think we should ask you, is there any ADUs involved with it?
No, I don't believe so.
We said we can.
I'm
There was that pitchfork and that fire thing we did that one.
No, I don't think.
There haven't been any improvements involved in the law, but there have been accessory dwelling units approved on a conditional basis, like the little stone house on my property, we used another law.
Yeah, there were some
bars on the window. Bars on the window.
She cut right through them. There used to be.
But, and there are areas in the land use ordinance that allows an accessory dwelling unit like operation
For specific purposes.
for specific purposes, but where you can have a separate living unit in your house. You can have duplexes, I mean, there's a lot of things that look very similar to an ADU. Yeah. Some over a garage or something. There haven't been any permits issued.
I have a
lot of
duplex in my
mobile company. And although a lot of people have expressed disappointment that they're not.
So could we go back a little bit and, the agenda calls for discussion of the status of CUP application for 153 Bridgeton Road property?
That was just on there last time.
I think there's a member of the public here. Member of the public.
Nancy?
So, I turn it over to Don.
I did issue the notice of violation.
You're gonna have to keep your voice up on this one.
I did issue the notice of violation. I haven't heard from the people. I've been compiling pictures, many of which you sent me, and I've gone through the files. There's been a number of violations going on. I will be sending them out another one. Apparently, they're going to have a big event this weekend. I've notified the sheriff's department. I've asked them to send me the police reports. Haven't got them yet. I also told them that we have issued a violation, notice of violation, with the hope that they might enforce that if somebody got it. I can't predict what they're gonna do.
What day's the event?
Saturday, I believe.
Saturday?
And that's,
What should I go? I'd like to see what's going on.
Okay?
that's,
Unfortunately, Mr. Bennett had a friend that passed away in a car accident on Sunday. And he turned this Saturday event into kind of a dedicated to her. Like a kind of a no, I don't think so. Actually, it was a fundraiser to give to the family, and we'd be like, nobody call, you know, but no, it's not that. It's actually right up to the group. I mean,
Memorial service?
but it's in memory of her. So he's having a big rally in memory of her. Yeah, maybe she's a fan. But I just bring it up because it's just kind of like, you know, I know people want to call it that.
right. Well, it's very clear they're in violation. I don't think anybody would argue with that. And I was hoping that they would call and come in so we could have a discussion, see what the options might be. If they don't do that, it appears so far they haven't.
Right.
I'll just be sending out another letter. And ultimately, we'll go to the select board to decide to take action, legal action.
So there's no chance that there's, now that you reported like the cease and desist letter, that the sheriff probably never go in and bring up about it?
It would seem to me that that's something they should do. I can't tell them how to do their job, however. I made certain that I made them aware that they have to notice the violation. With that hope that if somebody calls them, they get down there and they see, 100 cars and we're not that different. Given that I told them as a town official, they can't do that. If they would take some action and shut them down. But I can't predict whether they would do that or not. That would be my hope.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm hearing that people know that the trial plan and they plan to I'm hearing that people are aware that there will be a rally on Saturday and they're planning to call the sheriff's office.
All right. We'll see how they respond to that.
Yeah.
That would certainly be helpful if they would at least respond and tell them their violation.
Yeah.
I made clear to them I can get them the paperwork and I'm available. Clearly, we've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
This isn't anything like a borderline state.
Yeah. And it's only getting bigger.
It is indeed. And my concern is for the safety of the people that are there, number one, because it looks pretty dangerous to me.
Are you looking at the one that I sent?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the fact is, if somebody gets hurt, they can sue the town because we knew they don't have a CUP. We don't take action about it. That makes us somewhat liable. Having sent that letter, that takes some of that burden away. But still, the folks on the pond down there have the right to enjoy the town. It's pretty darn difficult. And if somebody doesn't even want to come in and talk to you, cancel kind of time. That's my preferred solution. I wish we could have done this all that. Unfortunately, this procedure you have to go through. Clearly, if they have an event there Saturday, they have to have the letter.
Yeah, well, it was, the letter was dated the 18th, so we figured if it was mailed the 18th, it was that Tuesday.
Right. But they would have had it by now, and they were clearly ordered to not have any more receipts or anything in the letter. And they can say that's a hardship, but at the other hand, they should have come in and got a CUP before they started anything. That's just the way our ordinances are, that's the way they should. So I don't feel too bad for them if they lose out on a couple of events. They brought that all on themselves. They should have gotten the letter by now, I should have got a phone call. Maybe I'll have one.
So is that issue discussed out?
I wish I could do more.
Discussion of status of hiring a new planning board assistant or secretary. We've had no reply to the ad. I wondered, Mariella, could you do the job temporarily?
I'm not really good at taking notes. I can try, but I'm not guaranteed.
Well, we wouldn't believe a guarantee in no, that's fine. That'd be wonderful if you would
And
just.
my rating is probably a little bit more than this person.
I used to do it, you could do it.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Well, I wonder, Jim, if the planning board has to go out there and be a recruitment spot. By putting pressure on Mariella, she's going to be looking to see if she can find another secretary,
Bob!
You've done such a good
So,
What about temp agencies?
Well, I was thinking schools. I mean, do schools have a business education anymore? I mean, when I went to school, I did business where we had accounting, shorthand, stuff like that.
I think the hope is that we get somebody who'd be more than just a note taker. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we've been enjoying. Is somebody more than just a note taker, somebody who helps craft what is going on. Yes, organized. So, maybe we could vote you in as the official secretary, and then whoever we hire would work under you. You would learn the job. Did you do this? Are you getting too technical? Okay. So I'm gonna temporary secretary. That's great. Yep. Until you can find your own replacement.
Hey, I'll put it on LinkedIn, I'll put it on anything.
Thank you very much. So, does anybody have anything else they want to bring before us?
No, I mean, I think we should just thank Carrie. I mean, though she is leaving, it was nice to have her, did a good job. Showed us what it was to be a secretary.
I've been very happy and impressed. Yes.
You bring them in, you train them, you build them up, and then they leave at first.
There was only 6 more months till the gold watch.
There was.
You're not going to work for Parsons.
You're looking for one too.
Maybe we can share.
She wouldn't tell us anyway. No, but thank you. Other than that, no.
Motion to adjourn is a motion.
Who's adjourned?
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Successful meeting. I'm no longer chair.
Appreciate it, thanks for everybody.
Yeah, good.
Chris.